In a world where everything moves quickly, where silence is rare, and the mind is always reaching for more, there is a story, a very old story, that invites us to do the opposite, to slow down, to let go, to sit still and listen. This is the story of Siddhartha, the man who would one day be called Buddha, the awakened one. But this is not a story of religion, or doctrine, or belief. It is the story of a seeker, a human being like you who saw suffering in the world and went searching for peace. He was not born enlightened. He didn't come here with answers. He lived, he struggled, he let go. And in the silence that followed, he woke up. Tonight, I invite you to follow this path with him. Not with your intellect, but with your breath, with your heart. This is not a lecture. There is nothing to memorize, nothing to agree with, nothing to resist, just a journey inward. So find a quiet space, close your eyes and listen, like the monks once did, under the Bodhi tree, beside a gentle voice in the forest, or in the quiet of their own breath. This is the story of the Buddha, and somewhere within it, you may find a piece of yourself. Long ago, in the ancient land of Lumbini, nestled between the snowy peaks of the Himalayas and the soft plains of India, a queen had a dream. Her name was Maya, and she was the wife of King Suddhodana, ruler of the Shakya clan. One night, as she lay sleeping beneath a sky full of stars, she dreamed of a radiant white elephant descending from the heavens, gently placing a lotus flower into her side. The elephant entered her body without pain and filled her with light. When she awoke, she felt a stillness she had never known. The royal sages were called. They bowed before her and said, "This is no ordinary dream. A great being is entering this world. He will either become a powerful ruler or a fully awakened one, a Buddha." When the time came for her to give birth, Queen Maya followed tradition. She traveled to her parents' home and along the way stopped to rest in the lush gardens of Lumbini. There, under the shade of a blooming sal tree, she gave birth, standing calm and smiling. It is said that the baby took 7 steps the moment he touched the earth. And with each step, a lotus bloomed beneath his foot. Then he stopped, raised one hand toward the sky, and declared, "I alone am the world-honored one." The trees bowed. The air became still, and for just a moment, the entire world paused, as if listening. They named the child Siddhartha. It means one who achieves what he sets out to do. He was born into wealth, into comfort, into the arms of a father who would do anything to protect him. But Maya, the mother, passed away just 7 days after his birth. And perhaps even then, before he could speak, Siddhartha already knew. That life, no matter how beautiful, also contains loss. And that the greatest peace does not come from comfort, but from seeing clearly. This was the beginning of the journey. Not of a god, not of a saint, but of a human being, just like you. Chapter 2. The Palace Life. Siddhartha grew up surrounded by everything the world could offer. Silk robes, endless gardens, golden bowls filled with ripe fruit, dancers, musicians, poets, and a father determined to protect him from anything unpleasant. King Suddhodana remembered the prophecy that Siddhartha would either become a great king or a great sage. And he could not bear the thought of his only son leaving the world behind. So he built 3 palaces, one for each season. each more lavish than the last. And in every corner of Siddhartha's life, the king placed beauty. There was no sickness, no death, no old age, nothing to disturb the illusion that life was perfect, soft, and endless. The prince knew laughter, he knew comfort, he knew pleasure, but he did not know truth. Even as a child, Siddhartha was different. When the other boys played with swords, he watched the animals. When others chased status, he asked about the stars. Sometimes he would sit beneath a tree for hours, simply breathing, watching the way the leaves moved in the wind. There was a depth in his eyes that the court could not understand. At 16, he married Yasodhara, a kind and wise princess. They loved each other deeply. They had everything they could need. But still, something stirred inside him. A restlessness, a sense that something was missing, not from the palace, but from within. It is said that Siddhartha once saw a farmer ploughing the field outside the palace gates. He watched closely. As the blade cut through the soil, he saw a worm wriggling in pain. He looked again and noticed a bird swooping down to eat the worm. Then a hawk swooped down to eat the bird. And in that moment, the illusion of peace shattered. He whispered to himself, "Everything eats everything else. Everything passes, everything changes." That night, as music played in the banquet hall, Siddhartha looked around and saw the laughter. But behind it, he saw longing. He saw aging. He saw people distracting themselves from something they couldn't name. And his heart whispered, there must be more than this. He didn't want to escape. He wasn't ungrateful. He simply wanted truth. Not the kind written in books, not the kind told in riddles, but the kind you can only feel in the silence after everything else falls away. And so, the palace, with all its wealth, became a golden cage, and Siddhartha was ready to step beyond it. Chapter 3. The Foresights. Siddhartha was now a young man, graceful, kind, intelligent, beloved by his people, protected by his father, adored by his wife. And yet he felt a quiet heaviness in his heart. The palace was beautiful, but something inside him remained unsatisfied. He longed to see the world beyond the palace walls. So, one day, he asked his charioteer, Channa, to take him for a ride outside the city gates. King Shuddhodana was hesitant, but he agreed and gave strict instructions. Clean the roads, remove anything disturbing, let the prince see only joy. But fate had other plans. On that first journey, Siddhartha saw something he had never seen before. A man, bent and trembling, wrinkled skin, weak knees, eyes sunken from age. Siddhartha turned to Channa and asked, "What is wrong with that man?" Channa replied gently, "He is old. All beings grow old." Siddhartha fell silent. He looked down at his own hands, so smooth, so strong, and for the first time he wondered, will I too become like that? A few days later, they went out again. And this time he saw a man lying on the ground, coughing, groaning, pale. "What is wrong with him?" Siddhartha asked. "He is sick," said Channa. "Illness comes to all, no matter how strong or rich." The prince grew quiet. He had never imagined that health was temporary. On the third outing, they passed a group of people gathered around a still body, covered in cloth, surrounded by flowers. "Is he sleeping?" Siddhartha asked. Channa looked at him softly. "No, my prince, he has died. Died. Yes, death comes to all. No one escapes it." Siddhartha's heart trembled. He had lived in luxury. yet death had always been near, hidden but never absent. He felt as if the world had cracked open. Everything he thought was stable, youth, health, life, was fleeting. And he thought, how can people laugh? How can they dance and feast knowing this waits for them? But the fourth sight changed everything. On the final ride, they saw a man walking calmly. He wore no jewelry. His head was shaved. He carried a small bowl. But there was something in his face, something radiant, still, free. Siddhartha asked, "Who is that man?" Channa replied, "A wandering monk. He has left everything behind to seek truth, to find freedom from suffering." And in that moment, Siddhartha saw a new possibility. A life not built on pleasure, not on fear, but on wisdom. The old man showed him aging, the sick man, the body's fragility, the corpse, life's impermanence. But the monk showed him hope. Not a hope that denies suffering, but a hope that goes through it. A quiet knowing that peace is possible. And Siddhartha knew he could no longer stay in the palace. He had seen too much. And something deep within him had begun to awaken. Chapter 4. Leaving the Palace. The days after the 4 sights were not the same. Siddhartha still smiled, still walked the gardens, still lay beside his beloved Yasodhara. But inside, he was already elsewhere. He had seen old age, he had seen sickness, he had seen death, and he had seen a path beyond them. Now, every banquet tasted different. Every silk robe felt heavier. Every moment of joy was followed by a quiet question. What lies beyond this? One night, the palace was especially silent. The moon hung low. The guards had fallen asleep. And Yasodhara, his wife, rested peacefully beside their newborn son. Siddhartha rose from bed. He looked at them, the people he loved most in the world, and his heart trembled. He wanted to stay. He wanted to be a husband, a father, a prince. But something deeper was calling. A vow that could not be ignored. Not for comfort, not for duty, not even for love. Because love, real love, is not possession. And truth must be sought, even when it breaks the heart. He stepped outside, where his loyal charioteer Channa waited, holding the reins of his horse, Kanthaka. Siddhartha wore a simple white robe. He carried no gold, no weapons, only his intention. They rode in silence toward the edge of the kingdom. And when they reached the forest, Siddhartha did something that changed his life forever. He dismounted, removed his jewelry, unbound his long hair, and cut it off with a small blade. He handed Channa his royal garments. "Take these back," he said softly. "I no longer need them." Tears filled Channa's eyes. He begged him to return, to think again. But Siddhartha only bowed and whispered, "I leave not out of anger, but out of love. I must find the end of suffering, not only for me, but for all beings." Then he turned and walked into the forest alone. That night, a prince died, and a seeker was born. In that moment, Siddhartha let go of everything, not as rejection, but as liberation. He was no longer someone's son, someone's husband, someone's future king. He was now simply a question, walking barefoot, breathing deeply, listening for truth in the wind and the silence between thoughts. And thus began the true journey, not toward the outside world, but toward the self, toward stillness, toward awakening, toward becoming the Buddha. Chapter 5. The search. Siddhartha walked alone through the forests of northern India. No guards, no servants, no title, just bare feet on dirt paths, and a heart filled with questions. He sought truth, not as an idea, but as something you could live, breathe, be. He met many teachers along the way. The first was Alara Kalama, a great yogi known for deep concentration. Under his guidance, Siddhartha learned to still his mind completely. He entered deep meditative states, peaceful, endless, vast. Alara was impressed. "You have learned all that I know," he said. "You may stay and teach beside me." But Siddhartha replied, "I have gone deep, but the roots of suffering remain. This is not the end." And so he moved on. Next, he studied with Udaka Ramaputta, another powerful master. Together they explored higher levels of formless meditation, states beyond perception, beyond awareness. Siddhartha mastered these too. And again, he was offered a place as a teacher. And again he declined. "This too is not liberation," he said. "It is a beautiful refuge, but not freedom." So he went further still. He joined a group of 5 ascetics, men who believed that truth could only be found through total self-denial. They starved themselves, refused shelter, held their breath until their bodies trembled. Siddhartha joined them completely. He ate almost nothing. His body became thin, hollow, skeletal. He meditated through storms, sat in silence while his stomach cried out. At one point, he became so weak, he collapsed while trying to bathe. A young village girl named Sujata saw him and thought he was a forest spirit. She offered him a small bowl of sweet rice and milk. Siddhartha accepted. He ate. And something inside him shifted. In that quiet moment, he realized, neither luxury nor punishment leads to freedom. Neither indulgence nor starvation brings truth. They are both extremes, both tied to the self. He remembered the sound of a lute being tuned. Too tight, the string snaps. Too loose, it won't play. The middle way, the balanced path, is the one that sings. So he stood up, stronger, clearer, and he walked away from the ascetics, not in anger, but with peace in his heart. They were shocked. They thought he had failed, that he had given up. But Siddhartha hadn't turned away from the path. He had finally found it. Now he would sit. He would listen. And he would wait for truth to rise from silence. Chapter 6. The Bodhi Tree. Siddhartha walked until he reached the quiet banks of the Neranjara River, near a small village called Uruvela. There stood a large fig tree, its branches wide like open arms. Its leaves shimmered gently in the breeze, catching sunlight and silence together. Siddhartha looked at the tree, and something in him said, "This is the place." He gathered some grass for a cushion, placed it at the base of the tree and sat, cross-legged, upright, still. And then he made a vow. "Even if my flesh withers and my bones turn to dust, I will not rise from this seat until I see clearly, until I understand the truth and end all suffering." So he sat. The sun rose, the sun set, birds came and went, clouds passed, the world moved, and Siddhartha remained still. Inside his mind, a great storm began to rise. Mara, the Lord of Illusion, arrived, not with fire or thunder, but with whispers. He sent desire, visions of beauty, of pleasure, of every comfort Siddhartha had left behind. He sent fear, storms, weapons, armies made of shadow. He sent doubt, cruel voices that said, "Who do you think you are? You are nothing. You will fail." But Siddhartha did not move. He did not fight. He did not run. He simply watched. He watched as thoughts rose and passed, as visions bloomed and vanished, as feelings came and dissolved like mist. Then Mara played his final card. He pointed to Siddhartha and said, "By what right do you sit here? Who witnesses your awakening?" And Siddhartha reached down and touched the earth. The ground itself shivered with quiet recognition. The leaves rustled as if nodding. The earth was his witness, not God's, not scriptures, just the moment, just the truth. Mara disappeared like smoke, and as the night deepened, Siddhartha saw clearly. He saw all his past lives. He saw how beings are born, live and die, not by chance, but through cause and effect. He saw the wheel of suffering and what turns it, and he saw how to stop it. He saw the nature of mind, the illusion of ego, the emptiness of clinging, and in that stillness, before dawn, he awakened, not to something new, but to what had always been here. The breath, the stillness, the awareness beneath all things. When the morning star rose, the world looked the same. But Siddhartha was no longer the same. He was no longer a seeker. He was no longer divided. He was awake. He was the Buddha, the one who sees, the one who is free, the one who shows the path, not through belief, but through being. Chapter 7. The First Teachings. The Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree for many days after his awakening, not moving, not speaking, just sitting, watching the breath rise and fall, as still as the roots beneath him. He did not rush to teach. He did not try to change the world. He simply stayed and watched the sun rise. It is said that for 7 weeks he wandered nearby forests, resting under trees, bathing in the river, smiling at the wind. People passed him and sensed something different. His eyes no longer searched. His face held no fear. There was no desire to gain, no need to escape. He was at peace, but the gods, it is said, became concerned. They came to him and said, "Please, share what you have seen. The world is drowning in illusion. If you remain silent, who will awaken?" The Buddha replied, "What I have realized is subtle, so quiet, so simple, that few will understand. People are attached to noise. They want comfort, not truth." But the gods urged him again. There are some, even just a few, with little dust in their eyes. They are ready to hear. They are waiting. And so, with compassion in his heart, the Buddha rose and began to walk. He made his way to Sarnath, near the city of Varanasi. There, in a quiet grove known as Deer Park, he found the 5 ascetics, the same men who had once practiced with him and then rejected him when he accepted a bowl of rice. When they saw him approaching, they whispered, "Here comes Siddhartha, the one who gave up." But as he drew near, they felt something shift. He was no longer just Siddhartha. He said nothing. He simply looked at them, and they felt it. Stillness, clarity, truth, not in words but in presence. They sat down at his feet, and he began to speak. "There is suffering," he said. "This is the first truth. All beings suffer from birth, aging, loss and death, from clinging, craving and confusion. There is a cause of suffering, desire, grasping, the illusion of I. There is an end to suffering, nirvana, the stillness beyond fire. And there is a path that leads to the end, the eightfold path, right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration." These were not rules, not beliefs, but practices, ways of living that turn the wheel of suffering in reverse. The ascetics listened. And one by one, their eyes began to clear, their minds began to soften, and their hearts awakened. This moment became known as the turning of the Dharma wheel. It was the beginning of a new path, not for one man, but for the world. A path that didn't require blind faith, only stillness, attention, and the courage to see things as they really are. From this moment, the Sangha, the community of monks and nuns, was born. And the Buddha continued walking, teaching, sitting, not as a god, not as a savior, but as a friend on the path, pointing not to himself, but to the freedom already within you. Chapter 8. The Final Years. The Buddha continued to walk. From village to village, forest to mountain, he taught not through commands, but through presence. He held no scripture in hand, only silence, clarity, and kindness. He spoke simply, to kings and beggars, to mothers and soldiers, to thieves, poets, farmers, and dying men. He did not ask anyone to worship him, only to look deeply into their own minds, to see the cause of their pain and the path that leads away from it. He taught that truth is not owned, that the Dharma, the teachings, are not to be clung to, even as words. He once said, "My teachings are like a raft. Use them to cross the river, but once you've crossed, do not carry the raft on your back." He reminded his students again and again, "Be a lamp unto yourself." The years passed. The Buddha aged. His body, once strong and youthful, grew thin and tired. His steps slowed, but his gaze remained steady, clear as moonlight on still water. He saw the rise and fall of kingdoms, the death of close disciples, the confusion of students. But he remained calm, not detached, but compassionate, like a tree that has weathered many storms, and now simply offers shade. In his final journey, he returned to a small town called Kushinagar. There, in a grove between two sal trees, he lay down on his right side, his head resting on his hand, eyes half open, half closed. His disciples gathered around him. Some wept, some were silent, some clung to his feet, unable to accept that he would soon leave. He looked at them with love, and he said, "All things that arise must pass. This body is no exception. Do not grieve. Instead, be mindful, practice diligently, and know that the Dharma is your true refuge." Then he asked, "Are there any doubts?" No one spoke. The wind was gentle. The leaves above rustled softly. The earth, it seemed, was listening. He closed his eyes, and with one final breath, entered parinirvana, the great peace beyond birth and death. There was no fear, no resistance, just stillness, like a flame that has completed its dance. And though his body returned to dust, the teachings remained, alive in the hearts of those who heard, and those who would come centuries later seeking peace. The Buddha never asked to be followed. He simply pointed to the mind, to the breath, to the silence behind all things, to the freedom that is always, already here. Chapter 9. Final Reflection. You've listened to the story of the Buddha, but in truth, it is also the story of you. Because the Buddha was not special in the way we often think. He did not arrive enlightened. He was born. He struggled. He searched. And he looked inward. He sat still. And he saw. What he found was not something new, but something timeless. A truth that lives beneath the noise. A stillness that has always been here. You may not sit beneath a Bodhi tree. You may not leave a palace or wander barefoot through forests. But every breath you take is a step on the path. Every moment of presence is a return. Every time you choose awareness over reaction, you awaken a little more. The Buddha's message was not about worship. It was about waking up, not to become someone else, but to remember who you already are, beneath the layers, quiet, whole, free. If your mind still wanders, it's okay. If your heart still aches, that's human. The Buddha never asked us to be perfect. He simply asked us to be honest, to see clearly, and to begin again and again. Each time you breathe, you're beginning. So tonight, as you close your eyes, don't try to become enlightened. Just rest, just breathe. Let go of the questions, let go of the past, and feel the deep silent space that lives within you. That is the Buddha's gift, and it was always yours. Thank you for walking this journey. Thank you for listening. And may peace find you in the quiet places of your own heart.